So today is, what's today's date? Is February 27th. We are calling in order the Economic Development meeting for Douglas. We have 4 members here today. The 5th might be showing up sooner than later. First thing on the agenda today is we need to do a formal notes review, which we haven't done in a while, and we gotta actually do that. So I printed out the notes for everybody to have. Please review them, and we can use some of these as follow-up action items for this discussion today. So take a few minutes to read through them. This is one of our longer sets of notes.
Yeah,
that we've taken.
They'll get better.
No, that's actually no. We needed the refresh. There was a lot that we talked about. So okay, let's. So if there were some action items that we actually pulled out of these notes. I want to at least review them and let's discuss where kind of they ended up. First up was a topographical verification for water and sewer. I don't remember who owned that one, but that is one we still need to follow up on. So let's keep that action item on the list. That action item, let's go and actually discuss that with Bill, town engineer. That's probably one for him.
I asked Bill about that, and he said he doesn't have any drawings or stuff on Route 16.
Oh, he doesn't have anything?
No.
So we might have to actually initiate a study to actually pull that.
The water and sewer wanted as far as grades to get the slope.
Well, the question I guess we're going to have to figure out is, do we need that before we have to go for any funding mechanism or any town vote? I don't know if we do, and that's probably the action item, is do we need to do the topographical verification before any type of construction plans or construction is actually proposed?
That's a yes, because any design is based
well,
on...
but so, sorry, when we actually move to getting the plans and proposed design, I assume we'll need it then. Do we need it to even go to the town vote and to try to get funding for a project like this? That I don't know.
I would say no.
Okay.
Can we verify that somehow? Is there?
So let's make an action item. We got to follow up Bill.
Okay.
So action item is to figure out when do we need the topographical verification to be completed. Is that before a funding request and town vote is put in place for this funding request, or would it be after, tied closer to the construction design timeframe? That's, I think, the open question.
Phil should be able to do like a slight thing on this. I mean, topographical maps are available online.
Well, we have it online with the GIS and all that, so we should be able to just do a basic, simple.
Idea of
Right,
it.
to find out where the low point is.
Is it a 100-foot grade? Is it a 10-foot grade? We can do some roundabout numbers, but let's make that a formal discussion with Bill, though.
And the engineering will get to the specifics to the
Right.
ends. We just need to the feet.
But what do we need before the vote, and what are we okay to push off until after a vote going into construction design? That's what the question, I think, the open question would be.
And Water and Sewer brought that up, right?
They were the ones that brought that up, and that's why I want to make sure that we keep that on Bill's radar, if anything. That's really for Bill. figure out some funding, check out the EDA grant, try to get the whole thing funded, not just the beginning. This was another discussion from Water and Sewer, is a funding mechanism. This one I think ties back into a discussion with Water and Sewer again, as well as the selectmen. So one of the things that I'm gonna go actually talk to you guys about today, I'll just throw it out there now, is I've spoken to Kevin Morse. Kevin has basically recommended that we get on their agenda for the next available meeting, which I'm gonna aim for March 19th, which is Tuesday. Starts at 7, don't know when we can get on the agenda. I will make a recommendation maybe at that meeting that we can also mention that to Water and Sewer to make sure that they're tied in with that exact same discussion, so maybe they can make it also, as well as Bill Cundiff and anybody else that would actually want to be present at that meeting. So this type of discussion is one that we'll have to hold for, I think, a joint meeting with Water and Sewer and Selectmen and everybody else involved. This is not an EDC-owned type of an agenda item for the funding
Right,
mechanism.
and there's different funding with, if we have an economic stimulant to get this funding.
But that's up to, not us, that's up to the selectmen and the people that deal with the funding mechanisms, is my point.
Right, we're
Yeah.
not doing it, but.
That's why, so we have to bring it to the selectmen meeting and let the other parties that actually deal with this, they'll have to come in. Capital and all, and those types of groups will probably have to be, obviously, tied to that. Bring a plan to get buy-in from boards and selectmen. Oh, I just mentioned that. So right now, what the request from the selectmen is to have a joint meeting, open joint meeting with them to actually do that. I think what we potentially will do for that meeting is to actually request maybe some of the developers we've been working with potentially can come to that meeting if they're interested. And they can actually maybe present some proposals, some plans they've been thinking about that actually might fit into this. I think that'll get everybody on the same page. It'll kind of get them some feedback through this mechanism in a nice, shorter time frame. So part of this buy-in is to actually get real things in front of them on March 19th.
Yeah.
So as long as Suzanne can get us on the calendar for March 19th, then we're going to look at that date to go forward with. Finding a way to prioritize this into the capital plan as an action item. Again, that's out of our hands. That will come back to the selectmen and capital and water and sewer and the other folks that actually deal with the funding of those types of things. Brad to bring the, okay, so this one actually we checked off. So I actually did submit to Bill Cundiff the recommendation we had on the rezoning.
Rezoning.
The rezoning of the actual properties. He actually has brought that to planning. where-
There's a group right now that's working. We've
Yes.
actually hired, it's working on,
All of these that are around
changing
the town.
zoning, yeah.
Yeah.
The zoning's kind of weird.
So they're actually, Bill has already brought this to planning. I think that it was supposed to be on one of the last discussions that Bill was gonna have with planning, but I think it got pushed off from an agenda perspective, so I don't know when the next planning meeting is gonna make it onto, but this is already moving in front of planning at this point
Well,
in
it's
time.
gonna have to move pretty fast because it has to be, they have to have a public hearing on it because I think they're pushing for the Springtown meeting.
Agreed, and Bill knows the urgency behind this,
March
so,
31st is deadline.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this was planned, these zoning changes were planned even before we came up with this.
so let's make an action item on that. I will follow up with Bill on that, just to see where he's at and what else is needed from economic development, if anything at all.
Yeah, I heard it was on the last planning board.
It was on the last, but I think it slipped to the one after.
Right, 'cause they ran out.
They ran out of
What do
time.
you want the action item to say?
Is for Brad to check in with Bill Cundiff on any EDC next steps needed for the rezoning effort with planning board. And
I'll
I'll,
stop and see too, and see where they got these lines going.
and I think who's chair of that? Is it Dan? Who run?
Is of zoning.
Dan
Planning
Zonings.
board, I think, is Ernie.
Ernie.
Ernie Marks.
Okay, so we might also want to check in with them, actually. I don't have a relationship with Ernie.
Zoning doesn't, zoning only, they don't have anything to do with the change in zoning. They just, when you go in for a zoning variance is what zoning does.
Right.
Planning board does the changes.
I can
So-
talk to Ernie.
So I was gonna say, you guys probably have a relationship, so if you guys want to reach out to Ernie and just find out where it is on the priority list for them, that would be great also, while I check with Bill.
Now, tell him, it is a priority.
No, I got
It
that.
is.
You can do your thing with him, Paul and Luke to talk to businesses in town about a restaurant week. This was a side action item from a different conversation. I did add you to an email with Paul. Did you see that email?
No. But I talked to Tom Maroli.
Yes, so it was Tom. That was, so I thought I copied you on an email, maybe
You
not.
maybe did. But
You and
I
Paul
talked
had put
to
on an
him
email with Tom.
directly anyway.
Okay, good.
and got some more information about the event that we'll be able to take to the businesses to talk about Restaurant Week.
So what's our AI from that? Any action items? That is it something that you and or Paul has to go talk to the businesses? Is it something formal at this point put in
Yep.
place?
It's not super formal. I think I'm going to come up with a one pager to give to the businesses.
Like a flyer.
Like a flyer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Just
You
this
know-
is what we want. This is who you contact if you want to be involved, and that's really all there is to it.
You know, one of the things about Restaurant Week, I was just talking to some people who are on this Historical Society, and they came in, and they're trying to figure out how they can work a thing with the restaurants to try to push Hiram Walker whiskey, because Hiram Walker was born in Douglas,
Oh, okay.
and so kind of
So this might tie
tying
into the
this type of
restaurant week,
stuff in,
actually.
you know, like, I don't know, maybe they could promote Hiram Walker, I don't know, whiskey sours or whatever it is you make with whiskey.
So this might be, honestly, that's kind of a little gimmicky twist that you
Right.
might actually throw on the Douglas restaurants.
Right.
That actually might be something you can throw into Restaurant Week with Tom. So, who is the one that's discussing that in
The
historical?
Historical Society, well, Laurie Church and Debbie Heinz, and the reason I know about that, because they came to see my daughter about doing T-shirts, and well, they want to try to see if they can get a hold of the Hiram Walker company themselves to see if they'll allow them to use their Hiram Walker
Oh, that's pretty cool.
T-shirts logo, and promote Douglas history through
So
Hiram
can you
Walker.
reach out to Historical Society
I
and
can.
see if you can make the connection?
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be our little jewel.
That would be kind of cool. Yeah. Okay, that was what I had for action items, obviously following up from the last meeting. So we still have a bunch of open action items and no real new ones from this conversation as of yet. Next thing on the agenda today was an update conversation from our last discussion, besides these action items. I think the biggest topic that I would bring up here is, and I'll let Bob, you kind of jump in here, what types of changes maybe from the last conversation we had into this conversation have we been having with anybody at this point? And obviously from a generic perspective.
Yes, there's a couple of warehouse people ready to look at these parcels for a 1,000,000 square foot warehouse.
Okay.
Distribution type of warehouse. That would be the anchor for this industrial park. They would do the road, the infrastructure, and then other companies could come in and just use the frontage of the road for their smaller warehouses.
So we potentially can get the
greenhouses.
warehouse to align to maybe these other cannabis development things we've been discussing, or greenhouse
I'm
development
trying to
things.
set up a meeting
Try
to
to
get
get
everybody on the same page,
Okay.
because they will complement each other. They're
Okay.
not competing businesses, they will complement each
Yeah.
other.
Well, we have enough square footage. I mean, from a acreage, I should say.
And
So,
we have to address the issue of water and sewer wanted the loop, so we have to ensure that we have a loop.
and that was,
half a loop, right? They only want half the loop, and then we could do the other half.
well, it's connected through the actual
Well, I'm thinking
site.
finished product, 10 years from now, what's it gonna look like? In
10 years. Come on. Talking like 5.
5.
The other thing too is a lot of times what they'll do is they make you leave an easement so they
Yeah.
can go through. In
course.
fact, on the little project that I'm doing down off of Gilboa Court, I have to leave an easement in case they ever want to go through with a water line to loop it through.
Okay. So it sounds like, so we have another player kind of in the mix now of this industrial park discussion we've been having.
Right, the last one was just basically cultivation, cannabis cultivation, so now we
Right.
have a distribution warehouse coming in.
Okay. So a few different opportunities for revenue into the town,
Yeah.
obviously. Both have similar needs: power, water, sewer, maybe gas. One of the other updates I did notice also that was passed around was there is, Uxbridge is actually pulling gas down Route 16 into the new development they're doing,
Campanile.
closer to 146. We will go and investigate to see, could we extend that gas further down 16 to maybe help feed into this type of a project? So that actually might be another source besides having to tap the main gas line that's sitting
Somebody
right
was
there.
working on that as far as approaching those people, whether it was Eversource or Campanelli, to see
Okay.
if we could extend that line down.
And the
16.
costs, and then because we'd need that cost probably pretty quickly to get into the May vote, if we're gonna want that into the town vote. So, sounds like these are pretty quick turnarounds, at least on the gas
Well,
aspect.
would we be paying for that, or that would be Eversource?
Great question. Don't know how that would work out. I don't know personally. I mean, I assume actually that's not a town resource, so yeah, you're probably right. At that point, it would actually be the hosting company of the actual resource.
Right, they would be extending their 8-inch line to a demand user.
And they'd have to understand on the back end what our proposal is to actually build out a park like this and what the demand would be and what the revenue source for them would be. So we'll probably have to tie them into, obviously, the developers on the back end that we've been talking to at some point.
Well, the other thing too is once you stop bringing the gas line down here into Douglas, who's to say it has to stop there?
That is an
I mean,
open
the whole
discussion.
town could stand to use some gas.
Oh,
That is
yes.
a very open conversation that probably needs to be had at some point. But we're going to be selfish for the short term right now for this
Yeah.
project, I think, and let's make sure we can at least bring the revenue in, which would then fund, by the way, bringing gas throughout the rest of the town if we actually were ever able to pull that off.
And I just thought about, can Eversource tap the gas line that's already going through these properties?
I think all those conversations have to be had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So no action items on that one.
Do we have contacts at Eversource?
As of right now, the town manager has been driving that the majority of that
Matt's
conversation,
been
Matt.
following
Okay.
that.
So we're going to kind of let him
Yeah.
keep driving that one. We don't need to be a part of that as of right now. We just got an update on it. That will be a conversation probably for the March 19th discussion. If the developers are able to participate in that, I'm sure that will be a part of the bigger conversation we're going to have. So. Any other updates around the industrial park development efforts that we're going after here?
No, it's just getting everybody on the same page, making sure all the dots are connected. We have a loop road, everybody can coexist.
Yep.
That's the main thing right now, and that might happen as early as next week, getting all the
Parties involved?
developers together,
Okay. That'll be good.
getting down to specifics.
And we have our time frame is basically the town vote, and we got to backtrack from the town vote, and that's, I think, what we're trying to work against right here. So I do want to make sure before our next meeting, so we had to move this meeting up, my fault, because I'm out of town next week, which might not be the worst thing, because if I can sneak another meeting in maybe sometime right after the March 19th selectmen meeting, we'll see how that works out. That might be a good time for us to sync up and take that game plan from the selectmen and figure out what we have to go do in a very short turnaround. So one of the things that I think I'd like to see, and I don't know if we have to formally vote on this, is moving the meeting. I don't think that's a formal vote, but I would like to maybe potentially move the meeting to the day after the 19th, which would be that 20th, is a Wednesday, I think.
Yep.
Or
It's a Wednesday.
do we want to actually hold it the same night of the 19th and just do it right after we're done with the selectmen and
I
come
think that's the best idea.
Um,
What night are they meeting?
Tuesday the 19th?
That might be a lengthy meeting.
Okay, I might have a problem with that, because I'm on the finance committee, and we're really up against it. If we don't have a quorum,
I know you are.
we're really in trouble.
Which is okay, by the way. I mean, obviously this would be a very interesting meeting, but the finance has to be done. So if we don't have a budget in place, then we're going to be in a bigger problem.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah, I do have a
what time?
finance, 7 o'clock.
7, yeah. So you're going to overlap with the selectmen meeting.
Yeah,
You might, depending on when we're on for the selectmen meeting, you might be able to make part of it.
yeah, I might be able to.
Okay.
And if we're gonna do the EDC meeting after the selectmen.
We just can't be
then we can
guaranteed.
fill
It
you
could be a
in, right?
really late meeting for
That's
the.
what I'm thinking. That may be a
So let's
long
actually,
meeting.
let's save it to hopefully the day after, the 20th. I'll propose that, and make sure that we can actually get a meeting room and set up
You
for
gotta
that
make
point.
sure you post it.
That's why, well, I get 48 hours to post it, so we're
Yeah,
good on the time
right,
frame.
right.
I want to make sure we can get onto the 19th. If we can get to the 19th, I'll get us in then for that Wednesday to have a quick meeting that we can turn around. Okay. That was it, I think, from the development effort. The other piece that I think we brought up also was, we mentioned already the restaurant week as the action item follow-up from last time, so Luke has that under control.
Have they decided on a date for this restaurant week?
So the first 2 weeks of June.
Oh, okay.
Good timing, okay. Good weather at least.
Outdoor seating.
You can do outdoor, well, I don't know how much outdoor we really have in this town, but yes. That's a
We have
different
the
discussion.
sidewalk. It's cool.
We have the sidewalks. That was actually my next one. I had open conversation for the last piece of this meeting today. So, any topics that anybody wants to bring up, open discussion.
I'd like to know if there's anything I can do here to help this go more smoothly. Is there any grunt work that needs to be done that I can pick up?
Honestly, right now, I'm going to say it, but I think Bob has the things in motion under control. So right now, no.
Yeah.
I'm sure there. By the way, so there is one thing. So I did two things actually. So let me actually bring those up. One of them is some of the discussions we were having with the first developer that we were talking to, not the current developer and the current warehouse developer, was how their model of bringing in multiple licenses into a shared, almost a community
canopy.
style. I forgot what they called it, but there is a way to do this, right? There was a discussion that said, is that something the Cannabis Commission would be interested in? And we were trying to figure out how could we get some level of verification or discussion with the Cannabis Commission. So just so you guys are aware, I actually reached out directly through their general email inquiry at this point, just to say, hey, you know, how would these situations be handled? Multiple cultivators potentially coming in, whether they're under the same roof or whether they're going to each be doing their own facilities. But let's say we wanted to attract 5, 7, 10 of them into the same town. Would there be any concerns? That was basically how I kind of emailed. I said, would you have time to talk? Let me know. Have not heard back yet. Just want to give you guys a heads up. I did put that inquiry in just to start to get that traction in place. The second thing I learned, and this is more from my notification, maybe you guys know this or not, what I did learn is that each cultivator that comes into town has to run, as part of their licensing and hosting agreement, has to run a town meeting. It is not up to us, the Economic Development Committee, to do it before any cultivators are on the list to be licensed and to move into the town. Therefore, we were discussing potentially maybe doing something earlier on. It's not going to work out at this point. What we're going to have to do is, depending on how this works out, if the developers come in and they then have to go license out facilities to the cultivators through that licensing process from the Cannabis Commission, one of those things will be bring in the actual cultivators to have the open town meetings. At that point in time, if we have one, then that one will be doing the meeting. If there are 2 or 3 that come in at the same time, we can do a joint meeting with all of them in front of the town, and we can help host that as EDC, but it's really going to be them running it and driving that because they have to legally actually drive that. So I just wanted to make sure that was as part of the conversation so everybody's on the same page here.
And that's already been done once already.
It has been done with the current facility in the envelope factory. I think that this almost might bring more attention, the way that the town has been kind of interested going forward in growing this industry, which is a good thing, but I just want to put it out there that there is no potential at this point until things are really in motion for us to actually have an open meeting on this specific topic. It would just be kind of, I don't want to say a waste of time, but we'd be duplicative at that point of other things that have to happen later.
I'm just curious, our last meeting, we mentioned cultivation in this industrial zone area, pretty much a large facility. Now we're going with smaller facilities. Has your Facebook surveys
Nothing else has
any
changed.
negative chatter on it, or it's pretty much
No.
the same?
No, I would say I haven't seen anything negative.
I'm seeing negative chatter in Uxbridge about the
Yes, that's different.
Caroline's place.
Uxbridge is interestingly negative for something that, my opinion, probably doesn't have as big of an impact. It's a dispensary that's almost on the Douglas side, if anything, closer to
Yes.
us. But the reality of it is, I think Douglas, at this point, forget Uxbridge, Douglas, the sentiment still feels strong in the right direction. We'll find out.
Okay, that's what I was wondering if there was a needle movement there.
No,
Towards negativity.
I haven't seen it,
Good,
but you never know.
that's good.
Not everybody's on Facebook. Facebook is a very small group.
That's very good.
It's
a
probably
small group, but it's a
3,000,
good-
which is still not a
it's a
bad
good
size,
feeling.
but if you say 3,000 are in this dynamic Douglas group,
3,000, speak, there's only 8,000 people in the whole town.
well, but I would say active people in that group was probably a much
Okay.
smaller segment of the people that are members of this group.
Yeah.
So you're still talking a 10%-ish of the population, I'm gonna
Good
bet.
blood pressure reading.
Oh, always.
You get a good pulse,
The vocal ones, though.
yeah.
They're the vocal ones, that is a good point, definitely, so. Any other topics?
Do we need to discuss anything about the solar?
Nope.
Nope.
That's not within, that's already moving and the open
One,
discussion.
Well,
Wall
yeah,
by
I guess
wall.
people are all taking a fit over it.
And it's not ours, it's not an
Okay.
EDC thing, it's already in
Right.
motion. I mean, it has a potential of bringing in 85,000 in revenue, I think was the rough number I had seen, which is, hey, we'll take 85,000 in revenue, I mean, that's a good, decent number, right? But we'll see where the cards land on that one.
So if nothing else, can we recap this one more time, make sure we get the action items right?
Please.
Topographical verification for water and sewer, we're gonna have a conversation with Bill to find out when we need that to be completed, if it's before the vote, or what do we need before the vote,
Exactly.
and also what do we need going into construction.
Yep.
I still have figured out some funding for the EDA grant. We still gonna do that?
We are gonna Bring that one to the town selectmen meeting. Sorry, the board of selectmen meeting.
Do we have to do anything there?
Nope, not do anything. It will just become part of the discussion. There has to be a funding mechanism discussion with the selectmen.
How do we capture that and make sure that we bring it up, though? Do we have
During the
an
board of
agenda?
selectmen joint meeting, we need to have a funding discussion. And that's all you have to put.
Find a way to prioritize this in the capital plan.
Also part of the selectmen meeting. Goes with the funding. There's kind of the same thing.
Okay. Brad, to check with Bill on any next steps needed for rezoning effort with the
I got it.
planning board. You got that. Paul moved to talk to the businesses in town. First, I'm gonna make some sort of a flyer for them. And
Okay.
gonna check into the Hiram Walker whiskey thing with the Historical Society.
Awesome.
Anything else? Anything we missed?
I gotta check with, planning board on rezoning.
Yes, Bob's gonna get an update
Priority
with Ernie
rezoning.
on rezoning. Awesome.
Okay, joint meeting set up with the selectmen on 3/19. Maybe water and sewer's gonna be there. And then we
I'm gonna
also
invite them.
have a meeting set for 3/20 for us to discuss any action items that come from that.
Follow-up.
Good.
Cool.
I think we're all set today. Anybody wanna make a motion?
to end this meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.